In the lively village of Kofiera, the sun rose gently over the red earth houses and dusty roads. Children ran through the streets, laughing and playing with sticks and balls made from old cloth. The scent of fresh bread from small ovens and the sound of drums from a distant celebration filled the air. In the middle of this bustling village, people lived simple lives. They worked hard in their small farms, sold vegetables and goods in the market, and helped each other whenever they could. The village was peaceful, but life was not always easy. Many struggled to make ends meet, and every coin saved mattered a great deal. It was during one bright morning that a man named Daniel returned to Kofiera. He had been away for many years, working in the city and learning the ways of business. His clothes were simple, but neat, and his eyes held a quiet intelligence. He walked through the streets slowly, greeting familiar faces and smiling warmly. Some villagers remembered him as a boy who loved to help others, and now he had returned as a man full of knowledge and hope. Daniel had opened a small trading post in the center of the village. The building was modest, with wooden doors and windows, but it was clean and welcoming. A small sign hung above the entrance, painted in bright colors, showing that people could come to deposit their money safely. Daniel greeted everyone with a calm voice and a friendly smile, and soon people began to trust him. They liked the way he listened carefully to their problems and never judged them. Among the villagers were Amina and Juma, who were facing their own struggles. Amina was a single mother with 3 young children. She woke up early every day to prepare food, clean her small house, and then head to the market to sell vegetables. Some days, her earnings were barely enough to feed her children, and she worried constantly about their future. Despite her hardships, she was kind and patient, always thinking about how to care for her family and help her neighbors when she could. Juma was a young man with big dreams. He loved working in the soil and planting seeds, and he longed to start his own farm. He often dreamed of growing enough crops to feed his family and even sell some at the market. But starting a farm was not easy. He needed tools, seeds, and money to build a small fence around the land. Every time he thought about his dream, he felt both excitement and worry. He knew he could not do it alone. When Daniel opened his trading post, Amina and Juma were among the first to visit. They brought small amounts of money they had saved, hoping that Daniel could help them keep it safe and maybe even use it to improve their lives. Amina handed over her coins with a careful hand, looking at Daniel with a mix of hope and curiosity. She asked him quietly if he could keep her savings safe until she needed them. Daniel nodded, smiling gently, and assured her that he would. He promised nothing more, but the simple act of trusting someone gave Amina a sense of relief she had not felt in a long time. Juma watched Daniel carefully. He had never met anyone like him in the village before. Daniel spoke politely, asked questions about the farm, and listened to Juma's plans with interest. Juma explained how he wanted to grow maize and vegetables, how he dreamed of a small farm that would support his family, and how he hoped one day to employ others in the village. Daniel did not give advice immediately. He simply listened and nodded. But there was a warmth in his eyes that gave Juma confidence. He felt that Daniel was someone who cared, someone who could be trusted. As more villagers began visiting the trading post, Daniel greeted each person with the same calm patience. He never rushed anyone, never looked annoyed or bored. He asked them about their lives, their families, and their dreams. People were surprised at how a simple smile and kind words could make them feel so understood. Even the children who came with their parents liked Daniel. They ran around the trading post, laughing, and he would wave or smile at them. Sometimes he gave them small pieces of candy or let them watch him carefully arrange coins and notes. Word about Daniel's trading post spread quickly. Villagers who had never met him started talking about him. Some were curious, asking, "Can we really trust him with our money?" Others were more cautious, saying, "He seems honest, but how do we know?" But many decided to try, encouraged by the way Daniel treated everyone equally, with respect and patience. Soon, the small trading post was full of people dropping off savings, asking questions, and seeking advice. Despite the growing crowd, Daniel never acted as if he was better than anyone else. He worked quietly, keeping records, counting coins, and giving gentle advice when asked. He seemed to know exactly how much each person had deposited, and he never made mistakes. Villagers noticed how careful and organized he was, and their trust in him grew stronger. Amina visited often, sometimes bringing her children along. She watched Daniel carefully, wondering how he managed so much money without ever looking stressed or tired. She noticed the way he treated others, always politely, always with a smile. It made her hope that one day, life could be easier, that her children could have opportunities she never had. Juma, too, became a regular visitor. He would talk about his farm, ask for advice about seeds, and sometimes simply sit and watch Daniel work. He liked seeing someone so dedicated and patient. He admired how Daniel never seemed to complain or become frustrated, even when the trading post was crowded. In Juma's mind, Daniel was more than just a merchant. He was a guide, a person who could help the village grow in small, quiet ways. As days turned into weeks, more villagers trusted Daniel with their money. People from neighboring villages even came to see the trading post. Daniel welcomed everyone, never turning anyone away. Each coin or note he received was treated with care, each person with respect. Some villagers still whispered doubts, but most were slowly convinced by Daniel's honesty and kindness. Evening in Kofiera was calm and peaceful. After the trading post closed, Daniel would sit outside and watch the sun set behind the hills. Children ran past, calling out greetings, and the smell of cooking food filled the air. He thought about the villagers, their dreams, and their struggles. He did not think about wealth or fame. All he wanted was to help people quietly, without drawing attention to himself. The villagers, too, began to change. They felt safer, knowing their money was in trustworthy hands. They dreamed bigger dreams, believing that small savings could grow into something important. Amina hoped for better food for her children. Juma imagined a farm that could feed the whole family. And with Daniel quietly watching, guiding, and protecting their savings, these dreams felt closer to reality. Life in Kofiera continued, simple but full of hope. Daniel became a part of the village, not as a stranger, but as someone who cared for everyone equally. People smiled more often, children laughed louder, and even the hard work on farms and in homes felt lighter. The small trading post in the center of the village had become more than a place for money. It had become a place of trust, friendship, and new beginnings. And though nobody knew it yet, Daniel's quiet work would soon touch lives in ways that no one could imagine. He had returned to Kofiera not for fame, not for riches, but to plant seeds of hope and kindness, seeds that would grow slowly but surely, bringing joy and opportunity to every corner of the village. Daniel's days at the trading post were busy but quiet. Every morning, he would open the doors early, sweep the floor, and arrange the coins and notes carefully in neat piles. Villagers would come slowly at first, dropping off their savings, asking questions, or simply sharing news about their families. Daniel listened to each person, smiling kindly, nodding, and sometimes giving gentle advice. He never spoke about his own life or wealth. To the villagers, he seemed like any ordinary man who had returned home, but in truth, Daniel carried a secret that no one knew. Though villagers trusted him with their money, Daniel never kept it for himself. Every coin and note that entered his hands was used quietly to help others. He walked through the village in the early mornings, carrying small bags filled with goods and supplies. At times, he would repair broken roofs and walls for families whose houses were weak and leaky. Some houses had cracked walls or torn roofs, and families often worried about heavy rains. Daniel would work quietly, fixing roofs or patching walls with his own hands or paying local carpenters to do the work. The families never knew who had helped them. One morning they would wake to find their home stronger, their roof fixed, or a fresh coat of paint applied. He also made sure children could continue their education. Every term, Daniel would visit the small school in Kofiera and quietly pay the fees for children whose parents could not afford them. He would leave the money with the head teacher, asking her not to tell the children who had paid. Amina's children, for example, had their school fees covered without her ever knowing. She assumed someone else in the community must have helped, but she never suspected Daniel. The children were overjoyed, and their excitement gave their parents a little relief from worry. Daniel also helped farmers. He knew how difficult it was to plant seeds and care for crops with very little money. Sometimes he bought sacks of seeds and distributed them to struggling farmers in the night. Other times, he would provide small tools like hoes or watering cans to help them grow their crops. Juma, who dreamed of starting a farm, found one morning that a bag of seeds had been left near his small plot of land. He was puzzled at first but used them carefully, planting them with care and hope. Slowly, tiny shoots began to grow, bringing new energy and excitement into his life. Even the sick and elderly received help from Daniel. On quiet nights, he would visit them with small baskets of food, warm blankets, or medicine. He left the items at their doors, knocking lightly and leaving before anyone could see him. People would wake in the morning, surprised to find gifts and supplies that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Many believed it was luck, others whispered it might be the work of spirits, but Daniel never revealed the truth. He believed the act of giving should be private, that kindness was most powerful when it was not done for recognition. Some villagers began to grumble. They whispered about delays in receiving their money back, or they said Daniel seemed too quiet and slow. They did not know what he was doing behind the scenes. Sometimes Amina worried when she visited the trading post. "Why does he take so long with the records?" she asked softly. Juma also noticed Daniel's calm and wondered if he could ever manage all the money properly. But Daniel never lost patience. He listened to every concern and responded with gentle words, never raising his voice or showing frustration. Daniel worked with a plan. He kept careful notes of who needed help and how much he could give without causing harm. Each coin was accounted for, but no one could see the impact yet. Sometimes, when he distributed seeds or helped repair a house, he thought about how happy the family would be when they realized they could live a little easier. He imagined children walking to school with bright eyes, farmers tending their crops with pride, and families sleeping safely under strong roofs. These thoughts gave him strength to continue his quiet work. Even in the market, Daniel helped people secretly. If he noticed a woman struggling to sell her vegetables, he might pay her a fair price up front and leave her some extra coins when she returned home. If a child was hungry, he left small food packages at the door of their home. No one knew it was him, but the kindness spread. Slowly, Daniel's hidden generosity began to touch the lives of nearly everyone in the village. One evening, Daniel stopped by Juma's farm to check on the small plot of land where the seeds had been left. He crouched near the soil, inspecting the young shoots carefully. Juma happened to pass by and noticed him. "Daniel, did you plant these seeds?" he asked, curious. Daniel smiled and shook his head. "No, the seeds will grow if you take care of them," he said. Juma was puzzled but grateful. He did not know who had helped him, but he promised himself to work hard and make the farm thrive. Amina, meanwhile, noticed changes in her household too. Her children seemed healthier, and she no longer worried as much about school fees. She could not understand why life had become a little easier, but she was thankful. She told neighbors, "Somehow, things are better. I do not know why, but God is helping us." Daniel's work was invisible, but its effects were real. The villagers did not see Daniel leaving the repaired roofs, the baskets of food, or the seeds for farmers. They did not know he spent nights walking through the village, helping silently. They only noticed that things were slowly improving. Children laughed more, farms began to grow, and families seemed calmer. Life in Kofiera became a little brighter every day, even if people did not know why. Daniel never spoke of what he did. He believed that giving should be simple and private. When people thanked him for small advice or friendly words, he smiled and nodded, but he never mentioned the larger things he had done. He was satisfied knowing the village was slowly improving, knowing that hope and opportunity were spreading quietly through his work. Sometimes, Daniel thought about how easy it would be to tell people what he had done. He could have gained fame or praise. But he did not want that. He wanted the villagers to thrive on their own, to believe in themselves, and to grow stronger through their own efforts, with just a little quiet help along the way. His goal was not recognition but real, lasting change. Even when villagers complained or doubted him, Daniel remained patient. He understood human nature. People feared what they did not understand. He knew that one day they would see the truth. Until then, he continued his quiet work, repairing homes, paying school fees, giving seeds, and leaving gifts for those in need. His life was simple, but every action was meaningful. Night after night, Daniel walked the village, leaving small signs of help. The moonlight reflected on the rooftops he had repaired, on the tiny shoots growing in Juma's farm, and on the smiles of children who did not know why they had fresh school supplies. Each step he took was an act of kindness, unseen but powerful. As weeks turned into months, the villagers slowly began to notice improvements. Families whispered about how life seemed easier, how children were happier, and how crops were growing better. They still did not know the source, but they began to feel grateful for the unseen force that made their village stronger. Daniel continued his work quietly, watching the results from a distance, satisfied that his efforts were slowly helping the people he cared about. And so, the village of Kofiera began to change. It was not sudden or obvious, but little by little, families grew stronger, children had more hope, and farmers could work without constant worry. Daniel's quiet generosity shaped the village in ways that no one yet understood. Every day, he walked his path of kindness, patient and humble, knowing that real change often came without recognition or applause. One bright morning, a traveling merchant came to the village of Kofiera. He arrived with a large wooden cart filled with colorful cloth, shiny beads, and spices from faraway towns. The villagers gathered around to see the new goods, curious about the man who had come from so far. Daniel, as usual, greeted him politely and helped him set up in the small market square. The merchant, however, was clever and observant. He noticed how many villagers trusted Daniel with their savings. He saw the lines of people at the trading post, each depositing coins or notes with confidence. Then he raised a question that was meant to spread doubt. "How can one man manage so much money and not grow rich?" he asked loudly, smiling slyly. "Surely, he must be keeping some for himself. A man cannot serve everyone and still have nothing." The villagers paused, murmuring among themselves. Some shook their heads, unsure what to believe. Amina, who had come to the market to sell vegetables, felt a sudden knot of worry in her stomach. She thought about the coins she had left with Daniel and wondered if they were safe. Could the merchant be right? Could Daniel have used the money for himself? The thought made her uneasy. Juma also heard the merchant's words. He had trusted Daniel completely, but a small seed of doubt began to grow in his mind. He remembered the bag of seeds that had appeared mysteriously at his farm, the small gifts he had seen left at doors, and the repairs that seemed to appear overnight. Could it all be a trick? Could Daniel have promised more than he could give? For the first time, Juma felt confused and worried. Other villagers began talking quietly among themselves. "Maybe he is keeping our money," some said. "He is too slow at the trading post," others whispered. A few even suggested that Daniel might leave the village one day and take all the savings with him. Fear and doubt began to creep into the minds of people who had once trusted him completely. Despite all the whispers and questions, Daniel remained calm. He continued his work at the trading post, greeting everyone with a smile, listening patiently, and helping where he could. When villagers came asking for their money, Daniel returned it without complaint or hesitation. He counted the coins carefully, gave them back politely, and wished the villagers well. He did not argue or try to convince anyone to stay. He believed that people had the right to decide what was best for themselves. Amina visited the trading post one afternoon, her heart heavy with worry. She had heard the merchant's words and feared the worst. "Daniel," she asked softly, "can I get back some of my money? I am not sure anymore." Daniel smiled gently and nodded. "Of course, Amina. Your money is safe, and here it is." He handed her the coins, carefully counted and neatly arranged. She felt a small relief but also a lingering worry. Juma came the next day, also anxious. He asked for part of his savings to be returned. Daniel gave it to him calmly, without showing frustration or anger. He understood their fears and did not take it personally. He knew that doubt was natural when people could not see the full picture. He did not try to force anyone to believe in him. He simply continued to do what he had always done, help quietly, patiently, and with care. Even though some villagers were doubtful, Daniel's quiet actions continued to make a difference. The small seeds he had given to farmers were growing into healthy crops. Families whose houses had been repaired found that life became a little easier, and children were able to attend school without worry. Slowly, unnoticed by many, the village was changing for the better. One evening, Daniel walked through the village to check on a few projects. He stopped by Juma's farm and looked at the tiny green shoots emerging from the soil. Juma was there, tending the plants carefully. "These seeds. I do not know who gave them, but they are helping my family," Juma said. Daniel smiled, kneeling down to inspect the sprouts. "Take care of them, and they will grow strong," he said quietly. Juma nodded, still puzzled, but hopeful. Amina was also noticing small changes. Her children were learning faster at school, and she no longer worried as much about their fees. She was grateful but confused. Sometimes she would whisper to herself, "Someone must be helping us, but who?" She did not know that it was Daniel, working silently behind the scenes. The merchant's words continued to echo in the village, but they could not undo the quiet good that Daniel had done. People were beginning to see small changes in their lives. Crops were healthier, homes were stronger, and children were happier. The benefits of Daniel's actions were slowly becoming visible, even if the villagers did not yet understand where they were coming from. Daniel continued to act patiently. He did not argue with anyone who doubted him. He did not try to explain why he had done what he had done. He simply continued to serve the villagers, quietly repairing houses, leaving gifts, paying school fees, and helping farmers grow their crops. Each action was small but meaningful, and together they created a strong foundation for the village's future. The days passed, and more villagers visited the trading post. Some still asked for their money back, still unsure of what to believe. Daniel returned it to them with the same calmness as always. He did not try to prove himself or gain their approval. He understood that trust could not be forced. It had to grow slowly, like the seeds in Juma's farm. Even in the evenings, Daniel continued his quiet work. He visited homes, leaving small surprises for families in need. He repaired roofs, replaced broken doors, and left baskets of food for those who were sick or elderly. No one saw him do these things, but they saw the results. Families found hope where there had been worry, and children smiled more often. The village of Kofiera was slowly being transformed by acts that no one knew about. One afternoon, as Daniel walked past the market, he noticed villagers talking in small groups. Some still whispered about the merchant's words, but others began sharing stories of small miracles. "My roof was fixed overnight," one person said. "My children can go to school now," another said. Daniel smiled quietly to himself, knowing that even though some doubted him, the work he had done was real and lasting. Amina watched the children play after school, thinking about the recent changes in her life. She could not explain why things had become easier, but she felt a new sense of hope. Juma tended to his farm, noticing how strong the shoots had become. He still wondered who had helped him, but he did not care as much. He was simply grateful and determined to make the most of the opportunity he had been given. The merchant eventually left Kofiera, his cart disappearing down the dusty road toward another town. The villagers were left to think about his words, and slowly, many began to realize that Daniel had done nothing wrong. In fact, the small signs of kindness and help were all around them. Though some doubts lingered, more people began to trust Daniel again, seeing the results of his quiet generosity in their own lives. Daniel continued his work with patience and humility. He understood that people might not always see or understand his actions, but he knew that real help was not about recognition. It was about making life better for others, even if it went unnoticed. The village of Kofiera was changing quietly but surely, and Daniel's work was at the heart of that transformation. Even when doubts returned, Daniel never wavered. He continued to help the sick, repair homes, provide seeds for farmers, and pay school fees for children. He knew that, in time, the truth would become clear. The seeds of hope he had planted would grow into something strong and lasting, and the villagers would eventually understand the full measure of his generosity. Life in Kofiera continued, small but full of promise. People worked, laughed, and learned. They sometimes questioned what was happening, but they could not deny the small miracles around them. Daniel's quiet efforts were changing the village, even if they did not yet know it. And so, even as doubts spread and rumors lingered, Daniel remained steady, patient, and kind. He understood that trust takes time, that generosity is most powerful when it is quiet, and that real change is often invisible at first. Slowly, the village of Kofiera was learning, one small step at a time, that the seeds Daniel had sown were already beginning to grow. One year, during the rainy season, the village of Kofiera faced a great challenge. Heavy rains fell for days, turning the dusty roads into muddy paths and swelling the small river that ran through the village. The river overflowed its banks, flooding homes, markets, and farms. People ran to save their belongings, carrying baskets of food, clothes, and small furniture to higher ground. Panic filled the village. Families huddled together in fear, unsure what the morning would bring. Amina's small home was among those damaged. Water had leaked through the roof, soaking the floor and destroying some of the food she had carefully stored. Her children, frightened by the sound of rushing water and heavy rain, clung to her tightly. She felt helpless, thinking about how she could protect them and what they would do if their home was ruined. Like many villagers, she worried about what they would eat, how they would keep their children dry, and how they could recover from the destruction. Juma's farm had also suffered. The small shoots that had been growing so carefully were bent and broken by the flood. Waterlogged soil made it hard for crops to survive. Juma stared at the farm, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. He remembered how hard he had worked to plant those seeds, and how he had dreamed of a farm that could provide for his family. Now, after just one flood, it seemed that all his effort might be wasted. The villagers came together, trying to help each other as best they could. They repaired small parts of houses, carried what they could to safety, and comforted those who were frightened. But there was still worry in the air. Many wondered how long it would take for the village to recover, and some even considered leaving Kofiera to seek better opportunities elsewhere. During this difficult time, something remarkable began to happen. Families started noticing small acts of help that had appeared quietly. Amina discovered a small bundle of dry clothes and some food tucked safely in a corner of her damaged home. She did not know who had left it, but it helped her feed her children for the night. When she visited the school, she realized that her children could attend classes again because their fees had already been paid. Her heart filled with relief and gratitude. She began to whisper to herself, "Someone has been helping us all along." Juma also noticed a change on his farm. Although many of the seedlings had been destroyed, a new set of seeds had been planted in a protected area. The young plants were growing, and he could see that someone had cared enough to ensure that his dream did not fail completely. Juma was puzzled but grateful. He knew that the seeds he had planted were growing again because someone had quietly helped him. Slowly, hope began to return to him, and he promised to work even harder to save his farm. Stories like these began to spread through the village. Families discovered that repairs to their homes had been made overnight, sometimes when no one was looking. Children were able to attend school because fees had already been paid. Farmers found new seeds or tools waiting for them. Slowly, people began to understand that the money they had trusted to Daniel had not been taken or misused. Instead, it had been used to quietly transform their lives, giving them hope and support in ways they had never imagined. The villagers began to see Daniel in a new light. They remembered how he had always greeted them kindly, listened to their problems, and helped in small ways that they had not noticed. They realized that the quiet man who had seemed ordinary was actually someone who had been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make the village stronger. Even when some doubted him, he had never wavered. Amina and Juma both sought Daniel out. Amina approached him shyly, her children holding her hand. "Daniel," she said softly, "I do not know how to thank you. You have helped my children go to school, even when I could not pay the fees. You have made our lives easier." Daniel smiled gently, shaking his head. "I only wanted to help," he said. "I did not do it for thanks. I am happy if your children can learn and grow." Amina felt tears in her eyes, realizing how much he had cared without asking for anything in return. Juma also found Daniel at the trading post. "Daniel," he said, "I saw the seeds on my farm. I do not know who did it, but they are helping me again. I am grateful." Daniel nodded. "Take care of them, Juma. Work hard, and your farm will grow. That is enough for me." Juma understood then that Daniel had been quietly helping the entire village all along. Other villagers began to share their stories as well. They told of repaired roofs, baskets of food, and tools left in secret. Slowly, the truth became clear. Daniel had not kept their money for himself. He had used it to quietly support the community, helping families, children, and farmers in ways they had not noticed. The villagers felt a mixture of surprise, relief, and deep gratitude. The flood, which had at first caused fear and panic, now became a turning point for the village. It revealed the quiet generosity that had been present all along. Families who had been worried and doubtful now understood that they had been supported in secret, and that someone had cared deeply about their well-being. Amina's children could go to school, Juma's farm could grow, and homes were repaired. Slowly, the village of Kofiera began to recover from the flood stronger than before. Even those who had doubted Daniel began to see the truth. They realized that appearances can be deceiving, and that quiet actions often have the greatest impact. Daniel had never sought attention or praise. He had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that the village could thrive even in difficult times. Now, the villagers understood that his work was not only kind but also powerful, shaping the lives of everyone around him. With the village recovering, people began to help each other more. Inspired by Daniel's example, they started repairing homes for neighbors, sharing food, and assisting children with schoolwork. The spirit of generosity and care spread throughout Kofiera. Daniel did not ask them to do this. He simply showed them through his actions that helping others could make life better for everyone. Amina, Juma, and many other villagers began to speak of Daniel with respect and gratitude. They no longer worried about their savings or doubted his intentions. Instead, they marveled at his quiet wisdom and his dedication to the community. Children began to play more freely, knowing that their education and future were supported. Families worked together to rebuild homes and farms, guided by the unseen hand that had helped them through hard times. The flood eventually receded, leaving muddy roads and damaged crops behind. But the hearts of the villagers were changed forever. They had discovered the truth about Daniel and the secret ways he had helped them. The village of Kofiera was not only recovering physically but also growing stronger in spirit, with hope and trust taking root among the people. Daniel continued his quiet work, helping where needed, repairing homes, and providing small gifts to those in need. But now, the villagers understood the depth of his kindness. They no longer questioned him or doubted his intentions. Instead, they began to look for ways to help each other, inspired by his generosity. Slowly, life returned to normal in Kofiera. Children attended school, families rebuilt their homes, and farmers tended their crops with renewed hope. The flood had tested the village, but it had also revealed the quiet heroism of one man who had worked selflessly to make life better. Daniel's generosity had quietly transformed the village, leaving a lasting impact that no one could forget. From that day on, the villagers often told the story of the hidden acts of kindness that had saved them during the flood. They spoke of repaired homes, school fees paid in secret, and seeds left for farmers to grow. And though Daniel never asked for thanks, the people of Kofiera carried a deep respect and gratitude for the man who had quietly shaped their lives for the better. The flood had been a challenge, but it also became the moment of revelation. The villagers now understood that the money they thought Daniel had kept was not lost. It had been used to transform lives, build hope, and give strength to the community. Daniel had been a silent guardian, working tirelessly for the good of others, and now everyone could finally see the results. The village of Kofiera was forever changed. Families were stronger, children had new opportunities, and farmers had the tools and seeds they needed to grow. And through it all, Daniel continued his quiet work, never seeking attention, never asking for praise. He only wanted to help. The villagers would often say to each other, "If only we had known sooner what Daniel had done for us." And in that simple statement, they recognized the power of quiet generosity, patience, and care. Through floods, doubts, and challenges, one man's kindness had created a lasting legacy in the hearts of the people. After the flood and the many quiet acts of kindness Daniel had done, the village of Kofiera had begun to thrive in ways no one could have imagined. Homes were repaired, children were attending school, and farms were growing stronger than ever. People had hope in their hearts, and there was a new energy in the air. The villagers realized that Daniel had played a great part in all of this, though he had never asked for thanks or attention. One bright morning, the villagers decided it was time to honor him. They gathered in the market square, carrying baskets of fruit, flowers, and handmade gifts. Children ran excitedly, carrying small drawings and simple notes that said, "Thank you," and "You helped us." The elders stood together, smiling and whispering about how the village had changed over the past months. Everyone wanted to show Daniel that they understood his quiet generosity. When Daniel arrived at the market square, he was surprised to see so many people waiting for him. His eyes widened a little, but he smiled calmly, greeting everyone politely. "Good morning," he said in his soft, gentle voice. The villagers clapped and cheered, and even the children waved small flags they had made themselves. It was a warm, joyful scene, full of energy and happiness. The elders stepped forward first. They spoke about the changes in the village, about how children were going to school, and how families were slowly overcoming the hardships they had faced. They explained how crops were growing, how homes were repaired, and how small gifts left in secret had brought hope to so many. Every word they said was filled with gratitude. Daniel listened quietly, smiling, but his modesty never faded. Amina came forward next, holding her 3 children close. Her eyes glistened with tears, and her voice shook slightly as she spoke. "Daniel," she said, "you have helped my children go to school. You have helped my home and my family. I do not know how to thank you enough." Daniel shook his head, smiling softly. "I did not do it for thanks, Amina. I only wanted to help. Seeing your children learn and grow is enough for me." Amina hugged her children tightly, feeling a wave of relief and happiness she had not felt in years. Juma also stepped forward. He held a small basket with fresh vegetables from his farm. "Daniel," he said, "my farm is thriving because of the seeds you left for me. I will work hard to make it grow and feed my family. Thank you for believing in us." Daniel smiled and nodded. "Take care of the farm, Juma. Work with your hands and heart, and it will grow. That is all I ask." Juma looked at the young shoots and green leaves in the basket, realizing that Daniel had quietly given him hope when he needed it most. Other villagers began to share their stories. Families spoke about the repairs to their homes, the baskets of food left quietly at their doors, and the small help that had allowed them to survive the flood. Children told of school fees paid secretly, and farmers spoke of seeds and tools they had received. One by one, the villagers told of how Daniel's quiet work had transformed their lives. Daniel listened to every story without interrupting. He smiled softly and nodded, never seeking recognition. He understood that real help did not need applause. He knew that kindness was most powerful when it was given quietly, without expecting anything in return. And now, seeing the gratitude and understanding in the villagers' faces, he felt that the time of recognition had finally come, not for himself, but for the village as a whole, to know how much their lives had changed. The children ran around Daniel, holding his hands and laughing. They had seen him at the trading post, helping their parents, and now they wanted to play and celebrate with him. Their joy filled the square, and their laughter echoed through the village. Daniel laughed softly with them, feeling happiness in his heart. The elders spoke again, reminding everyone that the true lesson was about community and generosity. They explained how Daniel had taught them that wealth is not measured by the money one keeps, but by the good one does for others. "Daniel has shown us that helping others quietly can change lives," one elder said. "He has planted seeds of kindness that will grow for years to come." The villagers decided to honor Daniel with a small tree planted in the center of the market square. It was a young tree, strong and full of potential, just like the village itself. Everyone helped plant it, watering it and covering the roots with soil. Daniel smiled quietly as the villagers worked together. He knew that the tree would grow, just like the hope and generosity he had nurtured in the village. From that day on, Kofiera became known for its spirit of community and generosity. Visitors to the village would notice the strong homes, the healthy crops, the children learning at school, and the joyful laughter of families. They asked the villagers, "What is your secret?" And the villagers would smile and say together, "If only they knew what he did with their money." Daniel continued his quiet work. He still visited families in need, repaired small problems, left gifts for the elderly, and ensured that children could attend school. He never sought praise, never demanded recognition, and never stopped believing in the power of small acts of kindness. The villagers came to understand that his work was more than money. It was love, care, and patience in action. Amina often spoke to her children about Daniel. "See what one kind person can do," she said. "He helped us without asking for anything in return. Remember that when you grow, you should also help others quietly, without expecting praise." Juma also told his friends about Daniel, showing them that generosity could change lives in ways no one could always see. The village grew stronger and more united. People shared with one another, repaired homes together, helped with school, and assisted in the fields. Daniel's example inspired them to think beyond themselves and consider how small acts of kindness could create big changes. He had quietly planted seeds not just in the soil, but in the hearts of the villagers. Years passed, and Daniel remained in Kofiera, still working quietly to help his neighbors. The tree in the market square grew tall and strong, a living symbol of his generosity. Children played under its shade, families gathered nearby, and travelers passing through noticed the life and warmth in the village. Daniel's work had created a lasting legacy. Even when newcomers asked about the village's secret, the villagers would smile, remembering all the quiet ways in which their lives had been touched. They did not need to explain everything. They simply said, if only they knew what he did with their money, and their eyes would shine with gratitude. Daniel understood that true wealth was not coins or gold, but the good one does for others. He had taught the villagers a lesson that would last for generations. Quiet kindness, patience, and generosity had transformed Kofiera into a place of hope, joy, and community spirit. The villagers had learned that helping others, even in small ways, could create a ripple effect that would touch everyone. Even in the evenings, Daniel would walk through the village quietly, checking on families, leaving small surprises for children, and helping where he could. No one needed to see him do these things. He was happy knowing that the village was thriving, knowing that the seeds he had planted, both in the soil and in the hearts of people, were growing strong. The villagers, in turn, continued to help one another, inspired by Daniel's example. They shared food, helped repair homes, and supported children in school. The quiet generosity that Daniel had shown had become part of the village culture. Kofiera was no longer just a village. It was a community where people cared for each other, and every small act of kindness mattered. Daniel's name became known in the village as a symbol of selfless generosity. People spoke about him not for fame, but for the example he had set. Children grew up learning about his quiet acts of kindness, and parents taught them that helping others without expecting praise was one of the most powerful things one could do. Even many years later, travelers visiting Kofiera would hear stories of the man who quietly transformed the village. They saw the strong homes, healthy crops, happy children, and united families. And the villagers would smile together and say, if only they knew what he did with their money, showing that true happiness comes from the unseen acts of love and care that change lives quietly but forever. Daniel's life in Kofiera became a story of patience, generosity, and humility. His work had left a lasting impact, shaping not only the village but the hearts of the people. He had shown that one person's quiet efforts could ripple through an entire community, leaving a legacy that would endure for generations. The village thrived, children learned, families were strong, and Kofiera became a place of joy and hope. Daniel had taught the people that real wealth is measured not by coins kept, but by the lives one touches, the help one gives, and the kindness one shares. And so, Kofiera remained a village of love, community, and gratitude, forever remembering the quiet hero who had given so much without ever asking for anything in return.